Episode 550 of Robservations is brought to you by the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival, accepting entries through December 1st. Have you made your movie? If not, why not? When are you going to start? The world is waiting for your vision. What's the world going to do if your vision never shows up? I don't know. I don't want to know. Could be dangerous. Get on it. Make that movie. I'm going to open up a little little black cherry and coffee sparkling water, because it's another scorcher here today in Los Angeles. Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, the dupe of the... Oh, come on. My 550th show and I screw it up. The Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema. And let's not forget, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I am Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Happy to be here with you today. Votes are still being counted in the election. It's interesting. I mean, this is exactly, as a matter of fact, I watched a clip of Bernie Sanders on Jimmy Fallon, I guess a couple months ago, and Bernie Sanders laid out, even to the states, to a T, exactly what was happening right now. Is that with the large number of mail-in votes, which couldn't start to be tabulated until the day of the election, until the day of the election, that there was no way that they were going to be able to tabulate all the votes in a day, so they continue to be counted. And as we all know, each state controls its own elections, so we have to let the states finish what their job is. And that's what's going on. Very interesting times. So you should never ever say that the states, they can't continue to count their votes. Literally, votes are cast, and then you count them. That's what happens in an election. It's not what happened in 2000, but it's what's happening now. And I don't think that there's really anything other than that. But I did want to talk about something regarding the election. I'm sorry, I'm a little schwitzy. It's really hot, and I hadn't turned the air conditioner on in a while, and obviously I needed to turn the air conditioner on because it's hot. It's like Africa hot in here. It's hot. That was a line from Biloxi Blues. I always love that movie. Here's the thing. This channel, the Robservations channel, the Burnettwork channel, but Robservations in particular, everything on this channel, clearly, if nothing else, the election showed us that we are a deeply divided nation. Almost, in a way, equally divided. But the important thing is knowing that, having once again a graphic example of the polarization in this country, I think more than ever, is we have to be able to talk to one another. Talk to one another. Let's have some dope discourse between everyone. And that's kind of what I always wanted to have happen here. Now, look, there are things that I am never going to see eye to eye with certain people on. Star Trek Discovery. But I will at least try. And I think, if nothing else, we have shown that once again, the idea that we're all Americans should somehow sort of bond us or bind us, like the Force, bind the galaxy together. And I think that more than ever, we must reaffirm the idea that every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. I really do believe that. I know it's sort of my catchphrase. I sign off every show with that idea. But I would like to once again reaffirm the notion that the whole point of this program is so people from however you identify, all shapes, size, colors, creeds, backgrounds, sexual orientations, religious beliefs, political beliefs, movies, whatever your favorite movie is, this should constantly be a place that anybody can come to and feel welcome. And, when I've said things that have alienated people or pissed them off, and we all do that, who's not? It's going to happen. I always am encouraged, and I always encourage when people reach out to me and say things like, I didn't appreciate what you said, or I have a different take on that. And I think that we should, as a community, just reaffirm the idea that this should be a place where we can have, dope discourse between everyone. And not that it wasn't a place like that already, but now that we're through another election cycle, however it shakes out, we need to continue to talk to one another and continue to respect one another and continue to be able to have a place where you can do that. And I'd like to continue to keep this place that place. So whatever that means. And look, it's not like we haven't been doing that. So I'm not yelling at anybody or anything. I'm just saying that for me, I thought it was important for me to once again reiterate sort of the mission statement of this channel, which is that this should be a place where we can come together and discuss our interests. It was very interesting. Somebody on Twitter was yelling at me this morning and saying that my hot toy loving, physical media loving ass doesn't care about families in Michigan that are out of work or people in the oil industry that are losing their jobs, and that all I care about is $1,000 hot toys or whatever. And it was interesting because they were calling me a Hollywood a-hole, and I'm like, man, I'm from Seattle. But the idea of it is like, I have no ties to those industries. I've never taken foreign money to produce any projects, although I would, like I've always said, I would love to set up a money laundering operation for the drug cartels by making movies. Jesting, of course. But I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that. I mean, you're a Hollywood elite. I am, as I said, I'm a bottom-feeding YouTuber that occasionally dabbles in independent cinema. I mean, I was joking, but kind of, but I was listening to that, and the guy was calling me an a-hole, and I finally said to him, look, you follow me. I'm sorry that the ills of the world are not for me to help you with. I mean, I'm in my own little tiny corner of the universe. Literally, it's literally a corner, and I'm talking to you about the things that I like, and hopefully share the enthusiasm with you that you all have as well, and in a way try to do things like this new short story anthology that hopefully you'll write for, and the film festival that's going on. I mean, it's interesting that I think what's most important is that we all pick a part of the world that's ours and maybe cultivate it a little bit and make it a little better than it was when we left. That's all I can do. I can't help people that have lost manufacturing jobs. My job is to perhaps give them solace or inspire them, whether they're going to make their own movie, whether I'm telling them they should see a particular film they might enjoy. That's all I can do. But I think that we all should do more for the people around us. I mean, clearly, this country has some very large problems that have to deal with the social fabric of this nation. And the only people that can solve these problems are ourselves, each other. The government's not going to solve these problems. Your local state or federal government cannot solve these problems. Only we can. So we should. I mean, we can. We can all sort of, I don't know, have a bit of just be a bit more mindful. Like when you go out into the world, what are you going to do? What are you going to take out into the world with you? You can't expect, like I've said, the universe is indifferent to your suffering. Doesn't matter. But you don't have to be indifferent to your suffering, and you don't have to be indifferent to other people's suffering as well. That's why I was making a point to open doors for people. Or nod if I see people on the street. Give somebody a smile. Shoot a smile someone's way. Now, I'm not talking about some hot chick, that turns you on, or a hot dude that you like, or whatever. But just anybody. And I think that's I think it's important. And I think that we need to, if anything, start there and see where the day takes us. Because boy, I don't know, man. It's pretty nutty out there. Pretty nutty. But we shall see. I forgot to get the letters today. I didn't go and get them. I apologize. I guess I have some. I have some letters to read. But I first wanted to talk about something else that sort of struck me. Christopher Nolan. So Christopher Nolan, there's a brief article in Deadline today that I wanted to share with you. Alexandra Del Rosario published this at 5:31 in the afternoon yesterday, actually. And I thought this was kind of... anyway, Christopher Nolan thrilled with Tenet box office performance. Everybody has to adapt to a new reality. Tenet hit theaters back in September, but Christopher Nolan finally has broken his silence on the action film's pandemic performance. Warner Brothers released Tenet, and I am thrilled that it has made almost $350 million, he told the Los Angeles Times in an interview published Tuesday. Tenet, which stars John David Washington and Robert Pattinson, gets a full chapter in British film critic Tom Schoen's latest book, The Nolan Variations. During the interview, Schoen and Nolan spoke with the Times about the themes in the filmmaker's works, the discourse surrounding his mind-bending titles, and more. While Nolan expressed pleasure with Tenet's box office numbers, he told the Times that he's afraid major studios might be taking home the wrong message from the picture's pandemic-age performance. Rather than looking at where the film has worked well and how that can provide them with much-needed revenue, they're looking at where it hasn't lived up to pre-COVID expectations and will start using that as an excuse to make exhibition take all the losses from the pandemic instead of getting in the game and adapting or rebuilding our business. In other words, he added. He continues to urge the industry and audiences to consider the importance of exhibition and the movie-going experience as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect box office releases and shutter local theaters. Back in March, Nolan penned an op-ed in the Washington Post wherein he dubbed movie theaters a vital part of social life worth preserving. In his latest interview, Nolan maintains that perspective. Long-term, movie-going is a part of life, like restaurants and everything else, he said, but right now, everybody has to adapt to a new reality. Now, I have to say, obviously, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I have been since I first saw Memento, and then I saw Following later, but I own them both, and of course, then I saw Insomnia, and I have his movies. I own them all on Blu-ray. And listening to him say this about the performance of Tenet, I was dismayed by these comments because it sounds to me like he was trying to make up. Tenet lost a lot of money. A lot of money for the studios. I mean, it was, dare we say it, it was a disaster. It didn't make back its negative cost. And I think that, you look at what they had to spend to make and market that movie, and they, you get your $200,000 or $200 million back. That movie did indeed cost $200 million. And then you got an additional $150 million back. That's nowhere near any kind of profitability. And I found it a little disingenuous what he was saying, that the studios have to adjust to a new reality. No, the filmmakers are going to have to adjust to a new reality. And that new reality is that Christopher Nolan can't make $200 million movies anymore, because who's going to finance them? The studios certainly can't. The studios borrowed money. They're on the hook for Tenet. I mean, Christopher Nolan, look, he had a very rich deal. Apparently, it was 20% of the box office gross. So he even made, if you think about that, on a $350 million box office number, if what's to be believed, if he was taking the gross, now that would be the gross from what the studios were making. So you're going to half that, pretty much. So you're looking at $175 million, and whatever 20% of that is. So 20 million. So what is that like? It's about 30 million bucks that he put in his pocket off the release of Tenet, maybe something like that. So he had a fine payday. Any film director to make 30 million bucks off a movie, that's a huge number for any filmmaker. So he did okay. But what about Warner Brothers? How long is it going to take them to pay back the money they had to borrow to make that film? probably a long time. Because remember, of $350 million, they don't get all of that. They get half of that. They didn't cover their own negative costs to make the film, much less marketing. So when I read this article, I was just like, dude, the new reality is not for the studios to suck it up. The new reality is for the filmmakers to realize that you guys have to go back and be innovative again. And not that you're not innovative. Christopher Nolan's very innovative, but you can't use every single bell and whistle that's available to you that technology provides, because you can't spend that kind of money on movies anymore, which means all of the entertainments that we're used to getting, whether it's the Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies, the James Bond movies, Christopher Nolan movies, we're not going to see those for a while. The reality is that studios are not going to be able to afford them, which is unfortunate. So people are going to have to get more innovative. And instead of making $200 million movies, you might have to make $75 to $100 million movies, because those might be the only films viable in the coming environment. And when I read this, I kind of got annoyed from a production standpoint. I mean, look, Tango Shalom cost 200 times less than Tenet did. 199 times less than Tenet or something. And you still, though, even though you're working in micro budgets, it's the same thing. You have to wonder, okay, if you're going to make a movie that costs anywhere from $1 million to less, how are you going to make the money back? Where are you going to make this movie? Where is it going to play? What venues do you think that you can sell it in order to make this film viable? I mean, these are all questions you have to answer. Whenever you're going to make a movie, you have to ask yourself, who is this movie for? And how much of an audience is there out there for it? Because even if you're making $1 million movie, that movie's also borrowed. You're getting it from investors. And in my case, you owe them 30% on the money they made. So you have to pay them back their principal plus 30%. Can you do that? So if you spend $1 million, you got to make sure you can make 1.3 million, and that's just cost. That has nothing to do with marketing or anything like that. So I think it's tough. It's a tough call, and it's like everything else. It all comes down to us. We as people. We're the only people that can change things. We can't expect our institutions to change things, because what are they but other people like us that have been put into positions where they're working for or in these institutions, and hopefully we hope that they'll work in the best interests for all of us. But when it comes to Hollywood, I can't control what goes on in the oil industry or manufacturing industries in the United States. What I can do is I can work on my own little projects. The Netflix show that I was working on yesterday, the movie that I have coming out, our film festival, whatever it is, that's all I can do is control my little corner of the world and try and make my little corner of the world the best it can be. It's very funny. Like, I know Tango Shalom, which you can go watch a clip of now on the Burnettwork YouTube channel, if you haven't already. I know that Tango Shalom is not exactly going to appeal to all of you imagination connoisseurs out there. It's not that kind of movie. It'll appeal to my mom. It would have appealed to my grandmother. When I got involved with that movie, it was already, that was already decided what it was going to be. I looked upon it as a challenge from a production standpoint and an editorial standpoint, which it was. And so I really enjoyed my time making it. Now it's up to us to make sure that our investors get paid back. We get the film into festivals. Hopefully it gets some good notices at the festivals it plays at. Then we can get a sale. We can sell the movie and then pay back our investors. And if we pay back our investors, then not if, but when we pay back our investors, hopefully then we can go to them and say, hey, we'd like to borrow more money to make another movie. And hopefully we'll make a bigger movie and it'll make more money. That's all you can do. That's the business that I've chosen. And to be accused of not caring about other families that are losing their livelihoods, that's ridiculous. Of course I do. I don't want anyone to suffer. But in terms of what I do, all I can do is provide entertainment for people that are perhaps not, they're home. They want to see something that puts a smile on their face. That is all I can try to do, because that is my chosen profession. So anyway, Christopher Nolan, man, the studios don't have to adapt to a new reality. Well, they do, but so do the filmmakers. The filmmakers really have to wonder, and they have to rethink, what is it we're going to be trying to make from now on? Studios already know that. They've got a backlog of movies they can't release because if they do release them, they'll just take baths on them and they'll lose a ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they can't do that. So they're between, right now, a rock and a COVID hard place. So it's tough. It is tough out there. Anyway, let's see what you guys are saying, if anybody is saying anything yet here. First of all, Raygun Media Productions became a member of the channel. Thank you, Raygun Media Productions. I appreciate that. Let's see. Anonymous. Hang on. Let me zip over to here and see what people are saying. Anonymous says, as you already know, during the summer of 1968, CBS did not air this episode because of its Western violence. That would be the episode. Oh, you're talking about The Prisoner. You know what, Anonymous? I'm going to save this. We are going to do our Prisoner show today, 6 of 1. I could not do it this morning, so we're doing it tomorrow. We're doing Living in Harmony, the episode of The Prisoner that is a very atypical Western-style episode of The Prisoner. So that will be on at noon tomorrow. I'll be doing that on this channel with Heel versus Babyface. So I will get back to your questions there tomorrow. Willow says, RE Omega Relay's chat yesterday. POC, person of color, is a pretty broad term encompassing a lot of diverse groups with very different opinions. I know quite a few Chinese people, including close family and friends and relatives, who voted Trump because they believed that they're being screwed over by affirmative action, which is attributed to the Democrats. There is a term, Baizu, which means white leftist, used to mock Western left-wing ideologies that's perceived as being discriminatory toward Asians. Hey, you don't have to look any further than the lauded Watchmen TV series to see discrimination against Asian women, strong, powerful Asian women, for all of its talk of how woke it was. Look what it did to its Central Asian female, smartest woman in that room. Didn't treat her very well. So yeah, I think that what we've seen, very interesting, a stark contrast to what we saw in the summer in terms of all of the protests and the riots that went on. It's very interesting. And I think one of the things that has been incredibly forgotten in this election cycle, I think one of the things that we have to learn is, not everybody is a white liberal that wants to get woke or think it's important to be woke. Just like you pointed out, Willow, it's a very interesting, diverse world out there with a lot of different ideas. And the idea that, there are people, white leftists, who mock Western left-wing ideologies that's perceived as being discriminatory toward Asians. Yeah, we really have to start thinking long and hard about who we are and what we believe and why we believe the things that we believe. And I think this election cycle has taught us that, and that's one of the things that we are, in fact, going to have to start dealing with. Akash Kumar sent in a super chat. Thank you, Akash. That was very nice of you. I feel this is the best they could have done in a pandemic. Nolan and Warner Brothers knew they would not make money. Still, they tried to help out theaters. In my opinion, he is the most impressive and capable director working. And yeah, Tenet isn't his best film, but still damn impressive. Got the whole IMAX theater to myself with booming bass. Haha. Yeah, you know what, though? I mean, it was nice that they tried to help theaters out, and that is what Christopher Nolan was trying to do. I totally understand that, and I'm a huge fan for Christopher Nolan for wanting to do that. But unfortunately, his idea of becoming a white knight or a savior of sorts for movie theaters didn't materialize. And I think it was wildly irresponsible of studio money to try, wildly irresponsible in terms of being a filmmaker, protecting, if you're getting to make a movie, part of your job at the studio level, and I don't need to lecture Christopher Nolan, he knows way more than I do about this, but I do think that you always have to remember that when you are a filmmaker, you have to be beholden to the people that have given you money, the people that have given you the job. It's part of your job to be beholden to those people. That's one of the things I think that they do a fine job with over at Marvel. Kevin Feige finds directors out of the box. No one has hired more out of the box directors, and when I say out of the box, people out of the box thinking, people like Taika Waititi and James Gunn and the Russo brothers and the directors of Captain Marvel. These were not people the studios would put into directing a $150 million to a $200 million film. This was a decision that Kevin Feige made because, in a way, they kind of make the Marvel movies like they do television. The producers, the executive producers, hold sway over all of it, but they try and bring in people that put their own imprint to it. Thor Ragnarok is absolutely a Taika Waititi film. Guardians of the Galaxy, unmistakably James Gunn. But they are still working within a paradigm, and I think that both James Gunn, Taika Waititi, the Russo brothers, they understand, having done now, well, Taika Waititi is doing a second film for Marvel, but when they're doing multiple films, they understand how to work synergistically with their producing component, which is the studio, which is Marvel, which is Kevin Feige. And that's a skill. And not everybody is good at it. And I think in the case of Christopher Nolan, who calls his own shots, he has pretty much carte blanche to do what he wants. And every time he makes a movie that people think, like they thought Inception, who's going to go? And then, of course, it makes $900 million worldwide. The reason Christopher Nolan has the kind of autonomy he has is because he delivered the goods that made money for the studio. If he didn't make money for the studio anymore, they would send him away. But he has been. I mean, he'll do Inception was in the middle of the Dark Knight movies, and that was his own conception, his own movie, and the fact that it made so much money strengthens his position with the studios even more, which is a good thing. But as long as he's making money, look, Warner Brothers took a huge risk on Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan wanted to tell the story about World War II. Warner Brothers graciously allowed him to do it and gave the money to him. And while it didn't make $1 billion for what it was, they made a lot of money on that movie. And it wasn't expected to do that well. Basically, he made an art film about an incident in World War II that Americans aren't even familiar with. And it worked because it was, forget what it was about, forget that it's really a British story about something that happened in World War II. It's also a universal story in the way he told it, what he did with time and telling multiple points of view in the film. It was really interesting, and it connected with audiences. Christopher Nolan has a way of doing that. And I think that it's as long as he can continue to do that. But Tenet, I thought, while it was noble to try and save theaters, I think ultimately that the release of Tenet was a mistake. And it was bared out because look at how much money it didn't make. Not good. Alexander Wilson says, AT&T's CEO already said Tenet was not a success. I think his opinion matters more. I just don't see people going back to theaters until there's a vaccine, which who knows when that's going to be ready. That DK Metcalf, what a freak of nature. That was a turn. That's pretty funny. Can I just talk about the Seahawks for a minute? Russell Wilson is on fire, and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I mean, come on. That offense and that's wow. LeBron James said it. That's what I was looking for. I knew it was LeBron James. LeBron James said that DK Metcalf is just different, which I think is hilarious. Let me read that. I know this is totally different, but Alexander, since you brought it up. LeBron James said it best in an Instagram story, which is the Bartlett's quotation of modern times. We built different. Good players come along all the time. Great players arrive less frequently and are certainly to be coveted and savored, but they don't alight in your brain, take root, and never leave, providing a perpetual highlight reel playing on a continuous loop in your mind's eye. And that's the realm of the transcendent and the genuine prodigies, like LeBron James. And as the old saying goes, game recognizes game, which is how King James happened to be tweeting his official stamp of approval on DK Metcalf on Sunday, right after the latest gravity-defying, jaw-dropping play by the Seahawks' second-year receiver. It was a 46-yard touchdown reception that showed off Metcalf's nifty moves, his blinding speed, and his uncanny agility, not necessarily in that order, and not necessarily one at a time. In baseball parlance, Metcalf is a five-tool player, and those are three of them. You could throw in as tool number 4 his excellent route running, despite the criticism of just that coming out of Ole Miss that helped lead to 8 receivers being picked ahead of Metcalf in the 2019 NFL Draft. The fifth and possibly most auspicious Metcalf tool, at least when assessing his long-term future, is an all-encompassing intangible that all call his will to be great. That wide tent includes work ethic, smarts, swagger, and intimidation. On that particular play, Metcalf left a procession of 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, for those of you who probably have no idea what I'm talking about, 49ers defenders grasping at the air, then somehow stayed inbounds after taking a sharp left turn toward the end zone and skirting the sideline all the way. It moved LeBron James, enough to dub Metcalf Baby Braun, after he noted that the two of them are simply wired differently than most. Metcalf is still a work in progress, of course, so I'll try not to get too carried away. I mean, he's just 22, with mere 25 NFL games on his resume. His career could be like one of those movies that begins with the most exciting chase scene you've ever seen and then devolves into a snooze fest of stilted dialogue. But I don't think so, and I suspect neither do you. Sometimes you just know. And DK Metcalf appears to be touched with the stuff of not goodness, not greatness, but preeminence. And that was written by the Seattle Times Larry Stone, columnist. So, yes, Alexander, I love that you were talking about Tenet, but you had to bring up DK Metcalf. Amazing. The Seahawks, man. Yeah, okay, they lost one game this year, but they are on fire. Russell Wilson he's throwing fire. Metcalf and Lockett are catching the fire. I call them the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest. Wow. Anyway, I know a lot of you have tuned out. Timula the Spider Monkey says, I've been to a few movies since all of this craziness happened, and I can't shake the feeling I shouldn't be doing this. I saw Tenet twice, and both times the cinema had maybe 4 other people in it. There were more people in the 4K screening of Akira. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know. There's never been a coronavirus vaccine ever. So we've got, flu shots. They have to change them, of course, every year. But I don't know. I don't know where we're at. I don't know what's going to happen with COVID cases exploding all around the world. So we'll see. Yeah. But they haven't really traced any super spreader events to movie theaters. Maybe because there's only 4 people in the theater. But they've taken precautions. They really have. And, we'll see. I just don't know. I don't know. I haven't gone to a theater. Elizabeth and I went to a drive-in to see New Mutants, but that's it. I haven't gone into a theater since February. And that's been, this is the longest time in my life since I was probably 4 years old that I haven't gone to a movie theater. So Alexander goes on to say, you are so lucky that your Seahawks are good. I'm stuck with the Washington football team, whose owner drafted a QB in the first round because he went to high school with his son. He got benched for a QB that went undrafted. It's hard being a fan of that. Well, you know what? Growing up, I'll tell you, I was there. I went to the first in 1976. I went as a kid. I went to the first games. The Seahawks were an expansion team along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we did have Jim Zorn and Steve Largent, and it was fun to watch them, but it's not like the Seahawks were a great winning team. So it's only been in the last, 15 years that the Seahawks have been, well, that's not true, but recently, 2014 was when we won the Super Bowl. So you're right, but I feel your pain. I know exactly what you mean. Akash Kumar also sends in another super chat and says, if I'm not mistaken, Nolan and his wife's own money put into those productions. His company, Syncope, has also been producing these films. Well, yes, a director's company, they don't put money into the films. But a director's company, if you're the director and you do the work, you can put your company name on the film. For instance, when I produced The Hills Run Red, my company, Ludovico Technique, which is my production company name that I've had since 2002, it was a presentation of Ludovico Technique. It was Warner Premiere, Dark Castle Entertainment, which was Joel Silver's genre division, Ludovico Technique, and Fever Dreams. Now, Ludovico Technique didn't put any money into the movie, but we provided the actual material. We brought in The Hills Run Red, the script, to Warner Brothers. We had developed the script. So that's what my production company's contribution was. That's why we got our name in the beginning of the movie. We got what's called a possessory credit. So that was great. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, Tenet was Nolan's worst film. Self-indulgent even for him. Glad he got smacked a little and hope this is a learning moment for him. Dunkirk was great. I agree. I have not seen Tenet, but I've heard the same thing from people. Movie Magic says, so did you talk about the Movie Magic suggestions on your YouTube community page some time ago? You know, I did answer questions about what I thought Movie Magic was, but it wasn't. I didn't talk about movie magic like certain moments in movies. What I think movie magic is the ability to actually elicit feeling from the audience. What movie magic is it's the ability to envelop you in a story and characters and moments and actually elicit real emotion in you. Like, I have to tell you, I, in my daily life, am pretty even-keeled. Pretty much, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. There have been a few times I yelled at a neighbor recently, but I was pissed off. I went nuclear. But normally, I'm a pretty even-keeled person. I would say I'm genteel. I don't get mad a lot. But I don't display a lot of emotion. I'm pretty even keel about everything. I keep sort of a distance from everything that's going on to keep my emotions in check. But I go to movies, I can't do that. I watch films and I feel something. When a movie makes you cry, that to me, there's so many different things working where that the movie has to be working, and it has to be working on so many different levels to make you cry. I mean, not only does the movie have to be good, it has to engage you as an audience member on so many different levels. Because first of all, think about it. The story has to work already. The characters have to work to the point where you are completely invested emotionally into watching a story unfold on the screen that isn't even real. Not only is the story not real, nothing you're seeing is real. The filmmakers have created a complete fiction that is from the ground up completely made up. All of it is made up. But it's using the storytelling form, and it's human beings. Actors have somehow engaged you. And when you get to a point where you're actually crying in a film, think about how crazy it is that a story that's being told on a screen, flickering lights, projected, can make you that invested to the point where you either get angry or you cry or something. You have an emotional reaction. That is the true power of the movies, that movies can do that. It's incredible because of how it has to engage your mind. And I think that's the real thing about movie magic. It's incredible. Alexander Wilson goes on to say, when I was a kid in the 90s, I saw Mark McGuire on TV hit a fastball off of Randy Johnson that hit the back wall of the upper deck in the Seattle Kingdome. It was one of the longest home runs ever hit in history. Memories of the Kingdome. Oh my God. Okay. So Alexander Wilson is asking about the Kingdome. If you look it up, the Seattle Kingdome looked like the top of the mothership from Close Encounters. This giant circular, it looked like a giant sort of brutalist Albert Speer designed spacecraft that had just set down on the southern end of Seattle, downtown Seattle. And I loved the Kingdome. I loved going there. I saw some of the first Seahawks and the first Mariners games there when I was a kid. But there are things about the Kingdome that I don't think many people remember. I saw Evel Knievel jump 20 buses inside the Kingdome. And he started on a ramp that was on the upper deck of the Kingdome and went down, and he jumped 20 buses. Another thing that I loved about the Kingdome is for Father's Day, they used to have a thing where they would open up the upper deck and they would fill the field, like where the football field would be or the baseball field. They would fill the field with like prizes. Like they would have brand new cars with sunroofs, and they would open the sunroof. And what you did was you would throw paper airplanes from the top deck of the Kingdome down, and if your paper airplane landed in one of the target zones or if it landed in the sunroof of a car, you won that car. And I loved the Kingdome. I saw the Who and the Rolling Stones in the Kingdome. The acoustics in there were terrible, but I did see them both of those bands play when I was in junior high school in the Kingdome, and it was amazing. But those are some of my. I really wanted to go back up to Seattle when they demolished it. They blew it up. I really wanted to go up there and watch it. I'm sorry I missed that, but I love the Kingdome, and I love the big giant ramps on the outside of the Kingdome that you had to walk up to get the different levels. Yeah, it was great. It was great. The Kingdome was great. Timbula the Spider Monkey goes on and says, we don't have to talk NFL this week. Well done on the win for the Seahawks, but the 49ers look a shadow of the team they were last season. Could be a long season coming up. Yeah, I hope so. It'll be interesting to see what happens. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, do you remember the show called Movie Magic? I don't. I mean, I'd have to... Well, let me look it up. Let me see. Magic... television show. Let's see if I do remember it. I don't off the top of my... Oh, it was a TV series in 1994. You know what? I never watched that show. I didn't, because in 94 I was really busy. I was working on movies. So, and I have to tell you, to be honest, it lasted a while, 70 episodes. And I probably saw a couple episodes of it, but I was so steeped in whether it was Cinefex magazine or I hardly ever watched in the 90s. I never watched. The only TV that I watched in the 90s was Star Trek. And then usually I taped it. I just was never home. I just didn't watch TV. I watched movies all the time. I usually didn't even I didn't even have cable a lot of the time hooked up. I never even had because I was never home, and when I was home, I was watching at that time Laserdiscs. So I just didn't watch much TV. But so I didn't, I don't have any memories of this show. And I'm looking at these episodes and I'm like, wow, how can I have not watched this show? That's amazing. I didn't. I never did, believe it or not. I guess that makes me a bad movie fan. So there you go. Anyway, I have Emil Johansson. Actually, I got to find his original letter, which I did not find, but I'm going to find it. So put a pin in that one. Let's see. Now, I don't know if I had read this. Let's see. I think I had. I read that one. No, I haven't read. I have not read this. Levi Old Elk writes in, and Levi Old Elk says, "Dear Rob, I'm a long-time listener and first-time writer. I am a Crow Indian from Montana." Oh, so every time you watch Hunt for Red October, when Sam Neill, before he dies, says, "I would have liked to have seen Montana," do you get all teary-eyed? Because I would. I'm a Crow Indian from Montana, and I enjoy all your Trek rants and insights within the film industry. My wife and I love listening to your whining about movies and your back and forths on the various films, and your arguments make us laugh because we can relate on so many levels. Several faves of mine were the recent Flash Gordon, which I've watched more times than I'm willing to admit, and An American Werewolf in London. I've been watching and listening to your channel since the beginning, and recently my wife has also found your videos intriguing, which has led to mutual listening sessions, and we've discussed many a topic that you've spoken on, and our favorites with your wife and your sometimes heated debates, yet you both stay true to each other, something every couple should hope to achieve. Well, that's very nice of you to say. In closing, I wanted to say it's very admirable that you correct yourself. Many people don't or refuse to do that. It makes us respect and want to listen to your channel even more, as many people out there with channels don't do that. And we do notice, and we unsubscribe as a result. Thank you for everything you do, and ultimately keep up the good work, and may the force be with you. Levi Old Elk. Well, Levi, what a great letter. Thank you. And please tell your wife thank you as well. Listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, while the show is called Robservations, I hope that my Robservations are essentially correct most of the time. I have no problem being wrong, because, well, I am wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I like it when people correct me because I like having the correct information. I've never understood the notion that you have to be right all the time. Like, I don't understand that. And to tell you the truth, this is the 550th episode of this show. And there's no way I am right all the time. I mean, even when I get corrected, there was a producer, a very big producer, somebody that I actually admire. And since then, we've started sort of a dialogue. A producer that I admire that actually wrote in, and the only time I ever had contact with this person for the first time was he wrote in and told me that he didn't say I was wrong about something, but he reminded me about something that I didn't bring up. Actually, to be honest, I didn't know. And he told me. And at first I was mortified, but then, we've started a dialogue and we're going back and forth. But he's somebody that I really admire. And he's done a lot of work, and not just that I admire, but a lot of you admire too. And it's kind of thing where the thing that he brought to my attention, I am a better person, I am a better pundit, and my show is better when somebody corrects me and I'm able to bring that information to you. So in my mind, making a mistake or giving out wrong information and then being corrected and then correcting that wrong information, that's just how to lead life, man. I mean, I think more often than not, people have gotten into a lot of trouble because they just haven't admitted that they were wrong, when it would be much easier just to say, you know what, I fucked up. I know it's really hard to do that for a lot of people, and it's hard for me too, but I think it's important. It's interesting. And by the way, Elizabeth and I are not married yet, but I really do think we have a fun relationship, and we really have a good time together, and we sort of get each other as people. And I'm glad that comes through on the show because, we are going to do this week tonight. We're starting our James Bond week. We're going to talk about Goldfinger tonight on Whining About Movies. And we're gonna look at it because No Time to Die was supposed to come out this month. So we're going to watch for the next 2 weeks. We're going to watch a Bond movie, and we're going to go through and watch a Bond movie with each actor who played Bond. So we're doing Goldfinger for Connery, On Her Majesty's Secret Service for Lazenby, Spy Who Loved Me for Roger Moore, Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton, GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan, and finally Skyfall with Daniel Craig. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. But I very much appreciate Levi. I like Levi Old Elk. I can't help but wonder, were you Levi Old Elk when you were a kid too, because you were an old soul? Is that a name that you've had for a long time? I like that. And I'd love to come. I would love to come to Montana. I've only drove through Montana a little bit of it. I'd really love to go. I've always wanted to drive across Montana and just to go explore it, see what it's all about, and I never have. So I would love to. I'd love to do that. I'll have to come look you guys up if we ever get up there, because I think it would be great. A friend of mine bought an old western town, and she's turned it into a B&B, and they've been filming things up there. So I would love to check it out. Yeah, so that's exciting. So thanks for writing in. Now, this one comes from Marcus Bisma. Marcus Bisma writes in, "Greetings from Bali, Indonesia. I would like to give my 2 cents on the future of big budget movies on streaming services from the perspective of a citizen of a developing country. In here, people go to the theater regularly, not necessarily just to watch the movie. It also mainly serves as a social event for a family or a group of friends, and most people here don't go to the theater by themselves. People are more than willing to pay for the ticket prices and concessions. Streaming services, while it can definitely serve for social gathering, is not considered a necessity. One of the causes is the widespread piracy and illegal streaming services that are actually inconvenient to use but totally free. There are no strict restrictions for these kinds of intellectual theft here. People think piracy is acceptable and do it all the time. Remember that Game of Thrones is the most pirated TV series in history. Can a pirated new movie release for theaters become available after the premiere? Yes, it absolutely can, but the quality is usually very poor until many months later when the movie's released on Blu-ray. It's not the same case with streaming services. For example, I know a bunch of Indonesian websites that provide free illegal streaming of The Mandalorian Season 2 with the same quality as Disney+. If the movie industry ever decides to release exclusives only on streaming, they will lose a lot of money from developing countries like mine. I don't think theaters will go away anytime soon, unless they find some kind of international law that totally restricts piracy, or the studio is willing to risk it, like the release of Game of Thrones, which is the most pirated show in history because it became a marketing tool. But hey, in the end, it's show business. They will only follow where the money goes." That's really interesting. Marcus, thanks for writing in. That's absolutely a different perspective. The fact that you really don't have streaming services, but you've got a whole lot of illegal streamers that are willing to provide you everything you want to see for free. That's something that is horrifying to Hollywood, but Hollywood is very aware that it goes on, and there's really nothing they can do about it. The funny thing to me, I learned this when I was in Israel. I was in Israel showing Free Enterprise back in 2005 at a festival. I went with Roger Nygard, who made Trekkies, the documentary, and I brought Free Enterprise, and we were at the Tel Aviv Cinematheque, and we had to screen things and lecture and all of that. And I consistently, people kept coming up to me and apologizing about piracy, that they wanted to know. They were all kind of, I must have had this question 40 or 50 times. They talked to me about streaming piracy the whole time I was there and stealing. And I said, look, and my answer was, can you get things you want legally here in Israel? And the answer was invariably no. So, I mean, it's not like Israel's that far away from Europe, so a lot of people were importing discs, or they were getting people sending them things, or figuring out ways to pirate stuff off the internet. And I said, if you have no way to get something commercially provided to you, what are you supposed to do? Now, I'm not advocating piracy, but I'm just saying, if you can't get something, I mean, in all of human history, if anything is, I mean, look at Prohibition. Did it stop people from drinking? No. Drinking just went underground. I mean, if you couldn't get alcohol legally and enjoy it legally, you would go to a speakeasy and you'd enjoy it there. So if you can't get things in Indonesia legally, and I'm sure everybody would, they'd like to get flicked on someone else. So, yeah, what an interesting letter. Thanks, Marcus, for writing in. I appreciate that. Always good to get a different perspective, which is good. This one comes from Electron Star Collapse. Greetings, Rob. In my Star Trek letter, I made brief mention of the Babylon 5 role-playing game. There are actually multiple game systems set in the Babylon 5 universe. I did not know that, which to me is a testament to how provocative the story was. To my knowledge, the first game to be released was called the Babylon Project, with the sample campaign included in the core rulebook centering around the sabotage of Babylon Station, or what we would like to think of as Babylon 1, by the group Earth First. However, in the background, it goes into a decent amount of detail to describe how the first 3 stations were destroyed, and how there were a few attempts to destroy Babylon 4 ahead of its disappearance. One of the things I found humorous is that I don't recall being discussed in the show was that the flagship protecting Babylon 4's construction was the Roanoke, both a ship from the show and a reference to a mysteriously disappearing colony. The game appears to use only three six-sided dice, each a different color, to resolve actions. At least with the sample campaign, the goal is for players to investigate the sabotage of Babylon Station, offering the chance to play any of the main races and various jobs, but suggesting a human and most preferably not a psychic. The next game I'm aware of is simply titled Babylon 5, which comes in an original black background art box, maybe, and a second edition, which is on a blue background. The rules of the two are very similar, with an appendix to show how to convert a character from the first to second edition. Anyone familiar with Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition should feel more at home with the 20-sided dice system used in this game. One thing I believe the first edition core book has that is missing in the second edition is the story background and hooks for each episode of Season 1, showing players are expected to participate on side stories that happen along the side of the events of the show. Once again, it's easiest for a human character, but other races are available to play as, and there are rules for psychic abilities. There are also a few fleet battle games I've run into. The one I ran into is called Babylon 5: A Call to Arms, which bears the same title as one of the movies. It makes reference to another game called B5 Wars, which apparently uses different sized miniatures, but is said to be compatible for play. It seems like it might be similar to Battlefleet Gothic, which is a Warhammer 40,000 spin-off, 40K, but I've never had the opportunity to play any of those style of games. You don't need the miniatures, as it has paper tokens you can use instead, but the miniatures, I'm sure, add just a bit more depth when playing the game. Beyond hardbound gaming books, there have been some fan projects that have been released for computer systems, after Sierra Online canceled the Babylon 5 Into the Fire. One was a total conversion mod for the game Free Space 2. It's been a while since I played it, but it offered a fun expansion into the Babylon 5 universe. It was easy to control since it modifies the already easy-to-control Free Space 2. The one that struck me as the most interesting was a project called Babylon 5 I Found Her, Danger and Opportunity, which is apparently based on a fan fiction and uses Newtonian physics to fly the ship. That's right, constant thrust means constant acceleration. It also means that you should be able to fly a Star Fury as you would see in the show. That's all I've got for now, but I can definitely see that I'm not the only one who loves this show. Maybe someone will make a game set after The Burn. The proper one, not the Star Trek Discovery one. Maybe this will allow players to rediscover the history of Babylon 5. Don't let the stars collapse on you. Well, Electron Star Collapse, that was a good letter. I have to admit, I'm very unfamiliar with the Babylon 5 gaming community. You know, there's literally like 2 blocks from my house here. There is a giant gaming store on Allen Avenue in Pasadena. It's pretty big. And, you know, I don't know if people are socially distanced. I don't know what's going on in there now, but it was always packed with people playing all kinds of games. And, you know, I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't, for whatever reason, those kinds of games, Traveler and Boot Hill and Dungeons and Dragons and all this stuff from TSR and all that, I never really got into it. You know, I don't know why. I played it growing up, and I gave it a shot. I did buy all the FASA Star Trek, the role-playing game stuff, and as I've told people before, I did roll up 430 character crew members that I had in binders. And but I never played the game. I never played the Star Trek role-playing game with anyone. I had every book. I had every manual, and I love the miniatures. Love the FASA miniatures. Loved them. And I bought so many of them. But I never played. And I never had anybody I could play with. So there you go. But thanks for writing in. I am a I really do appreciate everybody that is a gamer, and it's a part of fandom that I think is great. It's vibrant, and people go deep into games, and you can find games for most of our great, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings. I mean, there's always some great gaming. I mean, Warhammer 40K, to be honest, I didn't know much about it until I started working with Alec Peters on Axanar. He was big into 40K. He would have these giant games. People would come and bring all their miniatures. They'd play them in the warehouse. It was huge. And that was fun. I liked all the miniatures, but I'm like, I can't even, because Warhammer was something that really appealed to me. But he used to bring me like the weekly Warhammer magazine that would come out, that had all the different armies you could buy and all the model kits. I'm like, I can't even get. Hot Toys. Terrible. I'd be bad. So I never got into it. But anyway, yes. So there you go. Omar94 is here again, writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. I just finished watching the Man from U.N.C.L.E. TV show, and I wanted to give my review for it. I saw the Guy Ritchie movie while I was watching the show, and I enjoy that film quite a bit, which gave me an interesting perspective on the show. The movie is an origin story of the show to an extent. The main difference is Alicia Vandikar's Vikander, not Vandikar. I was thinking Van Damme. Alicia Vikander's character was made specifically for the movie, as that character does not appear in the show. Also, the movie shows Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin working together as a duo. However, earlier episodes didn't have a duo, as they were mostly focused on Napoleon Solo, while Kuryakin didn't really work with him that much. Eventually, because fans really liked Kuryakin, he got a larger role and became a team with Solo. On to the review of the show. I have mostly negative review for the show. For the good, I really did like the first season, as it was both serious and fun at the same time. And as a fun fact, there is one episode which a very young Kurt Russell appears and accompanies Solo on a mission. Now for the negatives. By the second season, that is when it started to fall apart. Earlier episodes of Season 2 tried to maintain the seriousness, but it focused more on the fun than having a balance between fun and serious, and by the third season, it was all fun and campy. Season 4 tried going back to being serious, but nothing was on par with the first season. However, I found out the reason, as the original creator of the show, Sam Rolfe, left after Season 1, and 5 different showrunners took over the series from there. Also, because of the popularity of the Adam West Batman show, the amount of humor and camp increased in the third season, which caused ratings to decline, and by the fourth season, the show was canceled. All in all, I enjoyed Season 1 of Man from U.N.C.L.E., but not much afterwards. If others haven't seen the show yet, you can watch all 4 seasons and maybe see something I didn't. But I would recommend watching the movie first, then Season 1, and then stop. Also, just a heads up, Season 1 is black and white, while the other seasons are in color. Thanks, and live long and prosper." You know what? I used to watch Man from U.N.C.L.E. and I liked it. I never loved it though, and I'll tell you why. Probably because I love James Bond, and I did not like camp. Didn't like camp, so that's why I wouldn't read it. This one comes from Jason Webster. "Hi Rob, hope yourself and the terrific members of the Post-Geek Singularity enjoyed both Halloween and the weekend itself. I was deeply saddened by the passing of Sean Connery over the weekend. For me and many others, he will always remain the best to portray British MI6 operative James Bond. My initiation to the Bond franchise produced by Eon Productions was through television with an airing of Thunderball from 1965, which immediately became my favorite and remains so to this day. Connery, a larger-than-life character himself, was able to imbue Bond with charisma, charm, suaveness, confidence, and swagger that saw him own the role. So much that every actor who assumes the role are immediately compared to him, even to this very day. Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice. They were the Star Wars of their day. In every way, one can measure the success for a film. In every way, one can measure success for a film. These films' box office juggernauts were. Box office earnings. Adjusted for inflation, earnings, and return on investment. Though it has been known for many years that Bond producer Cubby Broccoli had chosen Connery based on having seen him in the Disney film Darby O'Gill and Little People, the Scot had worked in theater and television and film before then. He appeared in films including The No Road Back from 1957, Hell Drivers in 1957, and Time Lock in 1957. However, those were small roles before he landed his first starring role opposite Lana Turner in Another Time, Another Place, 1958. The film is famous for Connery having disarmed and knocked out Turner's gangster boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, after he stormed onto the set and accused Connery of having an affair with Lana Turner. During this time, Connery's television credits included Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1957, Woman in Love, 1958, Adventure Story, 1961, and The Frightened City, 1961, and Anna Karenina, in also 1961. However, the Bond films were not the only indelible mark the Scot left in the industry. Sir Alfred Hitchcock's Marnie, The Hill, The Anderson Tapes, The Offense, John Huston's The Man Who Would Be King, The Wind and the Lion, and Outland all showcased his considerable acting talent. However, it would be his performances in The Name of the Rose and The Untouchables that finally saw him receive recognition he richly deserved in winning the BAFTA Award for Best Actor for the former and the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in the latter. These performances and those in Highlander, The Presidio, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Family Business were evidence of his range to successfully act within any genre. His performances in The Hunt for Red October, Russia House, Rising Sun, The Rock, and Finding Forrester showcased his longevity and consistency to deliver great performances. What? No Zardoz or Meteor on these lists? Come on, man. Further testament to this fact came in a 2003 poll conducted by Channel 4. Connery was ranked 8 on their list of 100 greatest movie stars. In all, he won 1 Academy Award, 1 BAFTA, 2 Golden Globe Awards, and was the recipient of the Cecil B. DeMille Award in 1995. Away from the film industry, Connery was a tireless campaigner for Scottish independence through his involvement with the Scottish National Party. He received numerous accolades for his work within and away from the film industry: Commander of the Order of Arts and Letters, the Kennedy Center Honors, and a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II during an investiture ceremony at Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh on the 5th of July 2000. There was a steely focused determination and hard-edged toughness to Connery's personality, qualities developed over growing up in Scotland, serving 3 years in the Royal Navy, and having worked numerous jobs: lorry driver, lifeguard, model, and babysitter before making it as an actor. These experiences served him well, and he always ensured that he learned from his peers and gave the best of himself in every film in which he appeared. Connery was an avid golfer since being introduced to the sport while playing James Bond in Goldfinger. So much, he owned the Domaine des Terreblanches course located in Tourettes, a commune within Provence, Alpes, Côte d'Azur region in southern eastern France for 20 years, before he sold it to German software engineer and entrepreneur Detmer Hopp. He was also a keen supporter of the Scottish football team Rangers FC Connery, and was Rangers FC. Connery was a solid player himself during his early years, and had even received a contract offer from English powerhouse Manchester United, which he declined to pursue acting. Fellow actors Michael Caine and Roger Moore were amongst his closest friends. His friendship with Michael Caine dated back to 1954 when they met at a party during a theater production of South Pacific. Though we mourn his passing, we should celebrate the man and his career that gave generations of joy as he entertained, thrilled, and inspired millions around the world. My condolences to his family and a wholehearted thank you to Sean Connery himself, as you were and will remain one of my all-time favorite actors. My favorite films starring Connery are Rising Sun, The Hunt for Red October, Thunderball, From Russia with Love, and The Frightened City. This is maybe a good question for yourself and members of the Post-Geek Singularity to answer in terms of what your favorite films starring Sean Connery are. Despite the sad news, I hope yourself and the fun-loving members of the Post-Geek Singularity are having a great week. Sincerely, Jason Webster. Well, Jason, I'll tell you, one of my favorite movies, not just Connery movies, is John Huston's The Man Who Would Be King, where, of course, he starred with Michael Caine, based on the Rudyard Kipling story. It's a fantastic movie. It came out in 1975. I love it. And, of course, people laugh, but I do like Zardoz. Zardoz is not, I don't know if it's a good movie, but I do love Zardoz. But yeah, other than the Bond movies, I mean, you know what? I really loved his performance in Rising Sun, Philip Kaufman's Rising Sun, the adaptation of the Michael Crichton book. And of course, I love Hunt for Red October. And The Untouchables. He's great in The Untouchables too. I mean, and I do like, I mean, guilty pleasure, but I do like Meteor. Meteor is, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. So, yeah. Yep. Check those out. But yeah, what a great letter. Thank you for writing in. Double Crit sends in a tip and says, does knowing the twist end of a movie ruin it for you? I watched The Usual Suspects knowing how it ends, and I found it very boring. Was going to watch Old Boy, but a recent Watch Mojo video spoiled that for me, and now I've lost all interest. That's an interesting question, Double Crit. To me, I enjoy watching, it's not just the story for me when I watch movies. I like to see how movies are directed and edited and the music, and I like to see how they're all put together. I mean, I still take great enjoyment out of movies, even if I've been spoiled. I think with those two movies, with Usual Suspects and Old Boy, it would probably be better not knowing the twists, because they're sort of mysteries. Like in Old Boy, you're wondering, well, why was that dude in that room for so long? Like, what's up with that? And why is this happening? And with Usual Suspects, you want to know the answer, who's Kaiser Soze. And I think maybe you're right. But look, I watched The Usual Suspects, and of course, for those of you who don't know, I did produce the special edition DVD of that. It's the special features have never come out on Blu-ray, which is a bummer. But yeah, I did a extensive documentary on The Usual Suspects that I'm actually pretty proud of, which you can find on French websites. It's around. But it's a great documentary, so check it out, if I do say so myself. But I think with a movie like that, I can understand where you're coming from. But I don't, even if I know what's going on in a movie, it doesn't bother me. I mean, it really, I don't feel like I've totally missed out on something. But I can understand how, if you're just watching a movie for the story and you want it to unfold, and if you know the ending, I mean, that would suck. So I totally get where you are coming from. But it doesn't bother me. I'll still watch. I will still watch movies. So no matter what, which is very exciting. Well, listen, everyone. This is going to be a short show. We're coming back at 7:30 tonight to talk about Goldfinger. I have a lot of stuff I have to do today. I've been sort of busy. That's why I was on a phone call. That's why I was late on this show today. So yeah, I think I'm going to end this episode and make it short. It'll be a 75-minute. I want to thank everybody for being here. I first want to thank my entire moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank the Richard. Obviously, the Richard does so much for the channel and puts on the watch parties, the Zoom parties, and all of that. I want to thank Robert Pariso's here. MC Blackcap is here. Bunyan Snipe is here. I want to thank you guys for being the moderators that you are. So thank you for that. I don't think I missed anybody else. But there you go. So tomorrow I will be not on the John Campea show, but tomorrow at noon I will be with Az, Heel versus Babyface, and we will be looking into the Prisoner episode, Living in Harmony, and I'll be doing this show. This show will start at 3 tomorrow, and then I would assume that we are also going to do On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but we might have to move that to Friday. I'm not sure, just depending on how things are going to go. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel generously via super chats and tips, and those people who are becoming members. Thank you very much for that as well. Memberships are good. We're going to use those memberships to expand the channel and do more. I want to remind everybody that I am starting a new show. It's going to be a pre-recorded show, not a live show, with Dieter Bastian in Saarbrücken, Deutschland, and it is called Let's Get Physical Media, and we're going to be starting that on Monday. I'll be dropping that show on Monday, and that should be fun to watch, where we're just going to talk about our physical media collections and what we love and what we can't wait to get and what we've got recently. Like one of the things, I'll give you a preview of. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is the metal, I think it's a Best Buy exclusive. This is all of the Rambo movies. In 4K in steelbooks. Yes, mine got a little dented here, but for the most part, it's in pretty good shape. But we're going to talk about our love of physical media, so that should be fun. It's going to be a short show, probably a half-hour show, and I don't know yet because I haven't made it yet. We're going to record it over the weekend and drop it on Monday. So there we go. We're just going to keep expanding. And, if you have ideas for shows, I throw it out to if you'd like to see things like Elizabeth and I are still going to do a Star Trek show. We are going to do a fully articulated show about toys. But if you've got ideas or things that we can do, the next 2 months are up through the beginning of the new year. There's not going to be a whole lot of entertainment news, or we can't talk a lot about movies. So we're trying to diversify and do some other things. But if you've got ideas, throw them my way, and we'll see what we can do. On that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, well, I'm sure I'll see you in a couple hours, but for those of you who I don't see, have a better day, and it'll be interesting to see how this election finally turns out. Bye-bye.